Hey everybody, welcome to Top 10 Thursday on the Mana League. I'm John as always, and this week we're taking a look at some of my mistakes. If you happen to be new to the channel, I do full card-by-card limited set reviews for every single set that comes out. Side note, the Eldritch Moon set reviews are going to be starting 1 week from tomorrow on this channel. A couple hours after the full set is spoiled, the white Eldritch Moon set review will go up. Make sure you see that. Make sure you subscribe so you know the second it goes up. But anyways, just like everybody, I'm wrong some of the times on my card evaluations, on my initial ones. And so this week is going to be the top 10 cards I was wrong about in my Shadows over Innistrad set reviews. Up first, we have just an honorable mention. This one isn't officially on the list, but we have Rise from the Tides. I gave Rise from the Tides an F. I talked about how few instants and sorceries you typically have in the average draft deck, and so I assumed this card just wouldn't be good. And I was correct, barring the explicit red-blue all spells deck, or mostly spells deck. This card is an F. This card is terrible. You don't play this card in any deck other than that one deck. It's just terrible. Now, in that one deck, it is pretty darn good, so much so that it's really the build-around card for that entire deck. So it is an F 90% of the time, but the 10% of the time that you actually do make that deck go off, this gets a lot better. So, honorable mention, Rise from the Tides. At number 10, we have Confront the Unknown. I rated this rather harshly at a D+. I assumed that you would never have enough clues for this to be giant growth regularly enough for it to be a really good combat. That's true. You don't often have 3 or more clues when you're actually casting Confront the Unknown, but that actually doesn't matter. I was undervaluing clues a little bit too much, I think, and so Confront the Unknown ultimately deserves to sit kind of closer to C, maybe even a C+. I'll usually play the first one and be totally fine with it. Getting that +1/+1 is it's not a huge swing, but it's good enough, but the clue is actually surprisingly valuable. So Confront the Unknown, number 10, shouldn't have been a D+, probably more like a C, C+. Up next at number 9, we have Stern Constable. I had this one at F, and that's a bit too harsh, even though I do personally still basically never ever play this card. But in my set review, I said that I felt like the discarding a card was a little bit too expensive for a tapper. It wouldn't be good because that was a pretty big cost to pay. I did address the fact that Madness was in the set, and so that could be good, but, it is good with Madness, but you're playing white, which means at least half of your cards, maybe a little bit less, but somewhere around half your cards don't have Madness because there's no Madness in white. And so it's not a huge bonus to it. F was too harsh. Some decks do want to play this. I think realistically it's more like a C-. You still probably should cut this pretty liberally, but there are some decks where you can get away with it. It's not an F, but still a C-. So number 9, Stern Constable. At number 8 is Sanatorium Skeleton. People lost their mind over this card at the start of the format, arguing it was one of the best commons in the set, and it was amazing, and you could do all these things with it, and it's an infinite chump blocker, and etc. And I think I rallied against that a little bit too hard by giving it a D-. It was a little bit low, but I'm still not super high on this card. It had a brief renaissance where everybody thought, this is incredible. You can pitch this to call the Bloodlines over and over and over. You can pitch this to Ravenous Bloodseeker. You can infinite chump block, etc. It does ultimately cost an awful lot of mana to actually pull that off. And so I don't think this card's amazing, but I think it's more realistically in the C range. I'm not sure if it's a minus, if it's a plus, if it's just a C natural, or what it is, but it's not a D-. So I was wrong on Sanatorium Skeleton, but I was never as high on it as some people. So number 8, Sanatorium Skeleton. Ravenous Bloodseeker is number 7. I originally gave this a C, which isn't a terrible grade, but it isn't the grade that this card deserves. I had a feeling that this would only go in the Black-Red Madness deck, and I was definitely wrong. It works really, really well in the Black-Red Madness deck, but it works in basically any red deck because you're generally going to have Madness cards in any red deck you play. Maybe not Werewolves, but even then you want Fiery Temper, and you want to cast Fiery Temper for cheaper. And Bloodseeker is probably one of the best discard outlets in this format, up there with Heir of Falconwrath. It's also a good way to enable Delirium. It's just a solid blocker as well. A 1/3 does a lot of work. It's really more like a solid B, and it is first pickable in some packs. So C was too low. Definitely should have been more like a B. Number 7, Ravenous Bloodseeker. Up next at number 6, we have Call the Bloodline. I was definitely off on this. I gave it a C-, and I thought it was basically a Madness enabler. I said the 1/1 vampire, that's neither here nor there. That's big whoop. This is a madness enabler. Those vampires were actually pretty solid, and they were at a minimum really good jump blockers, especially because you could make one on your turn and one on your opponent's turn. They played very well with Indulgent Aristocrat, and they were just all around a decent addition. In addition to being a madness enabler, Call of the Bloodlines probably not really a C-. I did find it to be a little bit swingy. There are definitely some times where I played it and it did nothing for me, and then other times I played it and it was amazing. I think people did go a little bit too on the other side at one point. People were heavily overrating this, but I think C- was way too harsh on it. So number 6, Call of the Bloodlines. Number 5 is Alwynwold Mysteries. I gave this a C, saying it was a good token generator, and maybe there's a build-around deck for this card, but ultimately it would be way too slow. It's not too slow, and it doesn't have to be in an explicit clues deck. It can go in any green deck. You can even splash it, arguably. Alwynwold Mysteries is just such a solid card for very little investment, and it generates large amounts of value over time. And unlike a lot of enchantments that are similar to this, it generates value from things that are going to happen in a game of Magic anyways. Harness the Storm requires very specific things to be done that you don't normally do, playing a lot of the same card. Alwynwold Mysteries, creatures are gonna die. You're gonna get tokens, you're gonna get clues, and then you're gonna make 1/1s. Just solid card, first pickable, splashable. Number 5, Alwynwold Mysteries. Coming up at number 4 is Silver Fur Partisan. I gave this a C-, comparing it pretty unfavorably to Zada. And Zada never really did anything in Limited. She was never really a good pick. But the fact that this affects all of your wolves, you don't have to target, or your opponent doesn't have to target, however you get the wolf, it doesn't have to target the partisan. It can target any wolf. And that was really solid. In addition, it, at least in the worst case scenario, it replaces itself. Your opponent kills it with something, you get a 2/2 wolf. So it replaces itself. Zada never did that. So Silver Fur Partisan, I was definitely way too harsh on C-. I was off on my comparison with it to Zada. I have pack one, pick one it, but I have also passed it in favor of removal. So I don't think it's an A or anything like that, but it's definitely not a C-. It's more like a B-, maybe even a solid B. But number 4, Silver Fur Partisan. At number 3 is Urdwell Illuminator. This got a C- as well, and I felt that it wasn't impactful enough, and it would probably sit in your sideboard a fair bit for when you needed a decent early blocker. Turns out, no, you're always pretty happy with a decent early blocker, maybe a pinger if it flies through the air, because it's going to be probably impeded, at least in the early, unimpeded, in the early game, because your opponent isn't going to have a blocker for it. And the double clue production is totally worth it. Getting that extra clue a turn whenever you make a clue is super, super solid. I think overall, I somewhat undervalued clue tokens across the board. You'll actually see about 50% of this list involves investigator clue tokens in some way. And Illuminator was definitely a victim of that. I definitely disagree with some of the comments from people like LSV saying that this is first pickable above Jace. You should take Urdwell Illuminator over Jace. And I don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form. I think that's way too sort of next level, being too cute kind of thing. It's a good card. Don't think it's that amazing, but it certainly was not the C- that I gave it. So number 3, Urdwell Illuminator. Up next at number 2 is the alter ego of Alwynwold Mysteries, Ongoing Investigations. I gave this a D. I gave it even worse than Alwynwold Mysteries. I thought that this would be too slow, it would require too much work, or too much to go exactly right for you to actually go off with it. You don't always get to do damage to your opponent, and that's true, but generally you do. And I was thinking a little bit too more on the defensive kind of side of things. This is just a cheap enchantment that gains you value by doing things that are going to happen in basically every game of Magic anyways, so why not get some value out of it? The fact that it costs 2 mana is absolutely incredible. The green ability on it is an extra little bit of value out of it. If your creatures are dying, maybe you're not damaging, but you're chump blocking, then you can get clues that way and get some life back as well to negate what your opponent is doing to you. All around a solid card, totally first pickable, totally splashable. D was very wrong. Really, it's much more of a B. So number 2, Ongoing Investigations. Finally, at number 1, we have another clue card, making this 5 clue cards that I was wrong about. Thraben Inspector. I was harsh on her, really harsh. How harsh? I gave her an F. I wasn't sold on clues being super valuable, and so I viewed this as a 1/2 for 1 that had a little bit of an upside. And I said, you know what, I don't play 1/2s for 1, and getting a clue, I have to pay 2 mana to get the card out of it. That's not very good. No, it's actually really, really, really good. The 1/2 even kind of you know, it's slightly better than a 1/1. It's got that 2 power or 2 toughness. It can block a little bit. There is a surprising number of 2/1s and 3/1s in the format, so it can even trade up a little bit. And that clue was really, really good. Absolutely, that clue was fantastic. Paying 2, you know, you didn't have to pay 2 on turn 2 or turn 3. You could pay it on turn 7 when you had the time and the mana to do so. So F was just way wrong. Way wrong on Thraben Inspector. Totally misgraded her. She's really more like a C+, I think. You could argue B-, but I think that's a little bit too high for a 1/2. But yeah, F, totally wrong. So number 1, Thraben Inspector. Or Inspector Clouseau. So that's my top 10 cards that I was wrong about on Shadows over Innistrad set reviews. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what cards you misjudged, either positively or negatively. What cards did you think were going to be the best card in Limited and they turned out terrible? Or which cards did you think were terrible and turned out amazing? Let me know down there, comments below. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at The Mana Leak. That's L-E-E-K, like the vegetable, not the card. You can also find me at facebook.com/The Mana Leak and twitch.tv/The Mana Leak. You've found me here on YouTube. Make use of that comment section down below. Click that thumbs up icon. Click the subscribe button so that you know the second that those Eldritch Moon set reviews start next Friday. They will be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday. I don't know if it's going to be 6 or 7 videos just yet. It's a small set, probably 6 videos, but subscribe so you know when they get uploaded. But as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all next time.